Well, we had a few titles.
I like that title.
Yeah, we had a few titles, and I guess not to be morbid about it, but, you know, we went out to L.A. to see the record, to start at the top of it. Lucinda Williams, who produced the record.
Right, Lucinda, we
didn't know. We went out to Los Angeles because she invited me to see her open for Tom Petty. It was the last night of his tour.
I saw that show.
At the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah.
And she was playing an hour set.
I went with Mandy, our good friend Mandy. Shout out to Mandy.
Mandy Stein.
Mandy Stein.
We love you.
We love you.
So she said, you want to come, you know, any of these nights? We play an hour. And Hollywood Bowl outside and end of the summer.
Wow.
And I'd seen Tom Petty before, but I feel like I hadn't seen the
I never had.
gig.
That was my first.
Yeah. I'd seen a couple, and, you know, they were boring. Not to,
really?
to diss the Dead or such a great artist, but I went to the Garden, and I was like, I could just listen to the record at home, you know, I don't know. And then I went another time. So I was a little hesitant, but people said, this tour, they're really, you know,
it was
it's
amazing.
a special tour. So I asked my manager to go because he was, like, talking about some things, and he was like, yeah, you should go out there. And we, you know, I was like, all right, let's go then. Let's go check this out. And we went, and Lucinda played this hour. We're out at the Hollywood Bowl, and then we go backstage, and I start talking to Lucinda, how you doing? And it was so good to see her play this great gig in this beautiful place, and people loved her, and as they should. The band killed it. And I said, how's Tom doing? You know, how's it going to be tonight? She said, he's sick, you know. And I said, she said, he's got a cold, but he's smoking. I was like, oh, boy, this is going to be a weird show. Now I'm going to see my third Tom Petty show, and it's not going to be good. I really need a good Tom Petty show. So we went out to the seats, and we're sitting there, and my manager goes, you know, this is the last show. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, this is the last Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers show. And I said, you're not right. I heard he loved this tour, and he got up on the airplane, and he said, we're going to do a lot more. And he said, I don't know. I heard it's the last one. And we just argued. So we watched the show, and it was so good, like amazing. I don't know what was in the air that night. Maybe the whole tour was like this. I was blown away.
I was too.
And there's a song on that record that stood out on that record, Wildflowers. And
like all of them.
Yeah,
almost.
but there was one, you know, that stood out that night. But in the past, I hadn't really noticed this song because maybe there's 15 songs on that record. I don't know if it's when CDs came out and people
were like,
you
too long ones, but you're glad it's too long.
Yeah, so he played this song, "Crawling Back to You," that night in California under the stars, and in the last verse, I don't remember it that well exactly. He said something like, "Me and my sidekick, I was drunk, and he was my sidekick. I was drunk, and he was sick. We got into a barroom fight, and then an Indian shot out the light." And then it said, the things I worry about don't happen anyway. Something like that. But that line, the things I worry about don't happen anyway, stood out. And the way he delivered the whole verse, I was like, I needed to hear that right now.
I need to hear that right now, actually. That just gave me goosebumps.
So it was just so great. And, you know, I bumped into all these people at the show, and we left, and me and my manager walked out, and he keeps saying, this is the last show, you know. And we bought one of those $5 bootleg T-shirts outside on the hill. And I wish I kept mine, which is silly. I don't know where it ended up.
I think Mandy did get one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I went with Mandy.
And the next night we had dinner with Lucinda, and we started talking about ideas of doing a record. And I guess a while before that, there was a Rolling Stone piece where she interviewed me and I interviewed her. And then there was a journalist in the middle, and they said, how about, you know, a collaboration? So it planted this seed. So we just talked about it, and she had been working with a guy named David Bianco who had done Wildflowers and done a million things, but he worked on a few Petty records. But Wildflowers is one of the things he did with Rick Rubin. And he was a guy I knew from D-Generation. Did my first ever go into a major recording studio record, the first D-Generation album for EMI at Electric Lady. So Bianco had done that. We had picked him because he was super nice, but he also did Frank Black, Teenager of the Year.
I love that record.
And this cool AC/DC song, Big Gun, that we thought had a sleazy old school sound. But the guy had done everything from, like, you know, Teenage Fan Club to, you know, the first Danzig record, maybe the first two.
Right.
And then he had done a lot of Dylan during his time, and Lucinda loved working with him. So
what Dylan did he do?
He did the Together Through Life or something like that it's called. I think it was a big record for Dylan about 5-6 years ago. He did the Christmas record, which was a lot of fun, actually. And another one.
So like recent stuff.
Yeah, later stuff. But and later 2 or 3 Lucinda Williams records, and he was a sweet guy, and she brought him down to a gig that we did in L.A., and me and him reconnected. And here was this guy, you know, when you're 25 and you first make a record with a producer and all, it was like, it made a big impression, and so it was cool to go full circle with him. We felt comfortable that we would try some stuff out in L.A., and we worked with him a bunch. And Tom Petty had passed away a week after we all hung out in L.A. I got the call. It was the same day as, Vegas. A friend of mine called me up, and that was that horrible day. The night before Marilyn Manson had got hit with a light rig, and I thought, wow, that's terrible. And the next day I got this call. Tom Petty had passed, and then the Vegas thing, and it was just really heavy. So that passed, so we went in the studio and worked a bit with Lucinda. Let's see how this thing fits and how it feels. And we used some of her players and some of mine, and we did a bunch of stuff, and it just felt really great. Her instincts for how a take would be, like, you record 2 or 3 takes, and if she was moving and grooving, she'd be like, that's the take. And I've always been a huge fan of hers as a writer and as a singer, and, one of my favorites. I'd first heard her on a Steve Earle record, I Feel All Right. The last song came on, and this voice just jumped up.
Right.
And I remember calling up Joey Ramone at the time. We'd talk every day back then, and he'd say, what are you listening to? And I said, I heard this woman, you probably don't know her, Lucinda Williams. And he said, I know her. I said, what, Joey? You know Lucinda Williams? And he said, yeah, I did a thing with her. I'm like, a thing? What did you do? He goes, it was a songwriter in the round. And they had done one at the Bottom Line in New York.
Oh, really?
And it turns out Lucinda would tell me. And I've done those, but not that one.
I did one of those at the Bottom Line.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But anyway, so, eventually Lucinda would tell me that Joey would send her music, and they were talking about maybe collaborating and writing. And, of course, he didn't last and live as long as we would have loved him to, and it was a sad thing.
You were good friends with him, huh?
Yeah, we became friends because it was the first tour that D-Generation went on that was a major tour. It was them, the Ramones, in theaters, and they were like, it was one of the reasons I got the courage to write songs. I'd be sitting there trying to learn Van Halen licks and studying with guitar lessons. Suddenly I heard the Ramones. I'm like, I got 3 chords. I'm going to call CBGBs. We got a gig. Let's write these songs.
Right.
And then seeing them, and they're very real and sweet people to us, especially Joey, even though Joey and Johnny didn't talk that much in their later years in the van. They'd ride around in the van, and I'd speak to each other. But Johnny was very good to us, and had a real cool attitude in a different way. And each of them were great. And Joey and I just really connected. He was my neighbor, and
where did he live?
He lived on 9th Street and 3rd Avenue.
9th and 3rd.
Yeah. So we go to movies and we go to shows, and he just loved rock and roll, and he had a very sweet, warm heart, and he wasn't partying these days. He would just wake up real early and be drinking his, frappuccino thing, and he'd leave me these long messages, which I still have on cassette, on my answering machine, about me, all excited at 9 in the morning, and I'd wake up around 1 and call him back. And
what would he be excited about?
I got this new song, or I want to DJ at the Green Door party, or some band he's producing, or the new Ronnie Spector thing he's working on, or one of the groups he's real excited about, or helping out D-Generation. I want to get you on Howard Stern, or he just had a lot, and he was very supportive.
That's cool.
He lent me some money to help make the first solo record, and he loved one of the songs, Solitaire. But he was generous. He lent me $5,000, which
wow,
was a lot of money, and still is a lot of money.
Yeah.
I didn't have the big record deals anymore, and it was it was a tough time. He was just a guy that, like some people in music, their MO might be sex or drugs or money, and for him, he just loved rock and roll. Like he just he'd be in the van with his headphones on, and if he was around now, he'd have a show on Sirius, be like some super DJ.
Yeah.
But and what a
Buck
wonderful
is like
voice.
That.
Yeah.
He just pure loves rock and roll, kind of like that too. Reminds me of that. Yeah.
But I didn't answer the question, so I'm going to swing back. We can go back into the booze and the health food. But the record started out, and we were at Dave Bianco's place and doing the stuff with him. And somewhere in the middle of the process, we were going back and forth from New York to L.A. based on Lucinda's touring schedule, my schedule. And David Bianco passed away just out of the blue. And I guess he had driven himself to the hospital and had a stroke. And
wow,
it really was shocking, Tom Petty, this. And I had a buddy I grew up with that worked for the Grateful Dead, Chris Cherokee, came to New York. We went out and saw the Bruce Springsteen play, hung out, and, a couple months later he was gone. And then after that, I was thinking about all this stuff, and my dad was sick, and I was down in Florida writing songs in a hotel visiting him, and throughout the year as we were making the record, my dad would pass away. I never played him. He was always very critical. We didn't grow up together, and
sorry for
and
your loss.
It's all right. He'd be like, yeah, I can't wait to let me hear something. I'm like, when it's done, I want you to hear it right. We never got
Right.
to that because.
But he was critical.
Yeah, well, he'd be like, yeah, I think you should do this. I mean, he didn't wasn't like some music expert, but
Right.
as a father, I don't know, he could be a ball breaker. It's always a funny thing. I mean,
Yeah.
he liked the solo career. He was proud of that. I played with his hero Bruce Springsteen, but
Right.
Degeneration, he didn't really understand. He'd be like, "What do you got that
It's
song
too-
Scorch? What kind of shoes you wearing? Those platforms?" I was like,
Right.
because you look like retard shoes, like Rain Man. What are those Mother Goose shoes, orthopedic shoes? I'm like, Dad, they're brothel creepers. Your boy Elvis wore them.
Oh, really?
But, he'd be a little bit funny like that. He's like, get a job, cut your hair, go to the post office. I'm like,
Right.
Dad, we sold out CBGBs 3 nights in a row.
Yeah.
He'd be like, I'll come see you when you play the Garden.
Wow.
And then we did play the Garden, but we were opening up for Kiss. But he did come to that.
Wow.
But my dad got ill, and he passed away. And a guitar player that had worked with me for a long time in Degeneration and in my solo stuff, Todd Youth, passed away. And
Yeah, I remember
another
going to
buddy
that
of mine, Tom
memorial.
Vaught, and it was just a lot. So I kept thinking about how much of this heavy stuff. I mean, we're getting older, but
Yeah.
we also live in a faster lane. Not that my dad did, but
Right.
you see more of it. I think in people that live on the edge and live hard. But it just a lot happened, and it kept happening. So I was staying at a hotel in L.A., and I walked down the street, and I was thinking of different titles, and I saw this store. I think it was for children. And it said Sunset Kids on it, and I said, I like that. And we're going back and forth with making the record on the West Coast, East Coast, and I just wrote down in a little notebook that I still carry, the analog Palm Pilot thing. I use a real pen, and like you have, and it was in there, and I had a bunch of titles, and I explained to somebody why this title meant something to me, why it could be a contender for the record, and this person that was at the record company said, oh, that makes a lot of sense, and my manager liked it, and we were fighting over titles, and I said, it just feels natural for it, and we I wanted something like that, and that's kind of the story behind it, I guess.
I really like that
just
title.
the passing of those folks, and the record's dedicated to these people. It says the Sunset Kids, but yeah, I don't know, a title and anything like a band name, like after a while, kind of becomes its own energy.
Mm-hmm.
If someone said you're going to name your band the Police, you
Right.
kind of would think like, what do you think of? You think of cops and badges, but now you think of like Sting.
Sting.
And, the car. Like I don't know, it becomes a whole different thing. The Beatles, I don't think of when I was a kid. I think of Bugs or the Beat. I guess they were being clever, and the Crickets and Buddy Holly. But names become its own kind of energy. I
Yeah.
think about these things when I'm in the van sometimes.